Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of What Works Wednesday with the Perfect RIA. I am your host, Matthew Jarvis, and with me today, a special guest, always a special guest, or we wouldn't have them on the show. But with me today is Daniele Beasley, who is both a brilliant financial advisor in her own right in Santa Barbara, California, but also an author, and not just any author, but an author of an adult coloring book for adults, obviously for adults, for financial planning, which is a very interesting thing. In fact, I have a stack of them here at my office now to give out to children of clients and clients for whom it's applicable. But Danielle's book was also published by my same publisher, Josh Rabb, who we had on the show, and a link to that is in the show notes. So I'm really excited today to talk to Danielle, to talk about her book, and to talk about her financial planning practice. So Danielle, with that, how are you doing today?
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, let's jump right in and talk about the book that you've written, and kind of let's talk about your goal for the book, and then we'll kind of talk logistically how that went and sort of your experience.
All right. Well, so my business partner is kind of my version of your Micah.
Okay.
Her name is Kelli, and we've actually worked together almost 20 years in the investment industry. But she is an experienced design person, and she's an artist, and I have a love of music. And so we put together this coloring book where we both have a shared belief in financial literacy, should be taught, but should be a cornerstone of education. And especially when we work in our practice as a CFP, generally I come from an active investment management world. I was in the C-suite of building organizations on the operations side and the compliance side. And really what I found out spoke to my heart was I loved helping individuals understand their bottom line. And it's very difficult when you come from the investment management world and where they're active and they're stock pickers, where investments are important, absolutely. But really what I've learned and what I love is about tax optimization, asset location, and having conversations around just managing your own finances. Because when, we would prepare presentations for them in our old firm, talk about duration and what's the yield on the portfolio. But, they would ask my partner to leave and say, well, can I retire? How much can I spend? How much can I give my children? And so I was, corporate CFO preparing financials. And so I would write on the back of a napkin, all right, 3%, 3.5%. And that's why I love your guardrails, right? You simplify things. And I have clients that will follow that. And some clients want to push the guardrails. But, that's really what led me to building a practice with Kelli, who, we espouse to the 80-20 rule where I'm everything finance and she's everything experience design. And while in our private practice 20, all the things that we talk about in terms of managing your finances and tax optimization, we wanted to write this book on a little bit like you do, Matthew. You spend a lot of your time giving back to your community and your peers, and I thank you for that. Being able, it's fantastic. I was handed your book by Josh from the first time I met with him to talk about editing my book. He handed me your book and said, "You need to read this." And be honest, be free. I'm a fan of Kitsis. I'm part of his member, but I didn't hear about Matthew Jarvis until Josh handed me that book.
Small world. That's wild.
So, the financial literacy coloring book, a lot of in our industry, I've been leaning into the client psychology side of things, right? Everybody knows about a budget. Everybody knows about how to manage their finances. And so when you look to your clients and you tell them a guardrail, right, you give them an income number and everybody freezes. They don't know how to live within it. And additionally, regardless, I work with independents. I know you specialize with retirees, but I work with independents, people who like to, I'm a single mother. I've been a single mother for many, many years. And it's nice to have that accountability partner or that person to be able to have these conversations with. And yes, we can handle their investments, but generally most of the conversations around running personal finance. And so the book is, right brain, which is your creativity, and that kind of where Kelli's expertise, comes to play. It actually goes along with your crayon test,
Yes.
right? Can you take a presentation and can you present it with a crayon? Now these clients can literally use crayons if they want to, but we have a little bit of lesson on the left side, which also speaks to the academic. Our learning is in the left side of our brain, and the right side, kind of tap into the creativity or the emotions, because what we're learning a lot, and I don't know if you've experienced this, is financial trauma is actually rooted in often, our money mindset is set at the age of 7, right? So how can you tap into those things? How can you kind of tap into your money mindset and heal some of those money habits? Might be a little self-serving, but we believe if you tap into the creativity and you kind of reduce that anxiety and that fear around it. And, we have simple mic drops and mantras of, for taxes, my favorite is play or be played, right? You talk about don't leave Uncle Sam a tip, right? Where it's, let's do tax planning. So you either play the game of waiting till April 15th and your CPA tells you how much you owe, or, that's being played, or you can play the game and do some tax planning and engage in conversations, throughout the year.
Wow, there's so many angles we could take this discussion. Like I love how this differentiates your firm so much from every other firm, right? So if we lined up 10 firms, 9 of them would say, here's this big Morningstar or e-money report that I made for you. And then yours saying, and I don't mean to be flippant, hey, here's this color book that's going to help you understand this super immense thing. And it seems like it's very authentic to you and your partner's style of like, hey, we could overwhelm you, right? You sat in a C-suite, you could overwhelm me with technical information. And you're saying, hey, let's take this down to the simplest level.
Exactly. And, so I grew up in the Pacific Northwest and I was a dancer. And so I grew up with music. Music to me is everything. So of course, when I found out, if I found validation in doing our research behind the book on the left brain, right brain, right, where music, it helps you tap into that memory. It reduces your fear. So, the music is definitely authentic to who we are. I'm everything music. She's everything art and design. And, it's kind of my give back to the one to many, because in clients, my private client practice, there's only so many clients that I can work with. I love your meeting surges. And, that is my dream, to be able to have such a rigid calendar, because I'm you probably, back in, 2010, right? When you're building the practice, you took it over from your father. We're, Kelli and I, we're doing everything. We pull in partners when we have to. And our third partner is actually Miss Kitty, her cat.
Oh, that's fun.
who led a lot of inspiration. But, I learned a lot from reading your book to be able to how to build a practice, and with this book is how I can give back. I'm not giving back to my peers like you, but we're finally getting acknowledged. I've been in the industry. I know we can't talk about age, but I'm proud of I was been in the industry for 30 years.
Have you really?
Now, and when I left my old world and I embarked upon my radical sabbatical when I got my CFP, people would say, wow, you're brave. I can't believe you're going to do that. But I had to relearn, and I had the beauty of being able to craft what it is I want to do for my business. And perfect mixture is having private clients and then being able to give back and teach, the younger generation, and to, be better with their finances and reduce fear and shame around it.
I love that. And congratulations on 30 years of the industry. It's funny when we reflect back. I'm like, oh, I remember when the industry, 20 years ago, what the industry was like and how it is now, and different things. Tell me how when you made the book, or as the book came into reality, how do you envision it being used? Like, who do you hope gets that book in their hand, and what do you hope they do with it, right? Because like you said, it's not just for your private clients, right? That's not hardly worth the effort of creating a book, as you and I now both know.
Yeah.
What's your vision for that? How is the intended use for that? If I was an advisor and I had a box of them, what would you suggest I do with them?
Well, and I would say specifically, it's not for my private clients, but it's for their children. But all of my clients, I just had a client who emailed me and said, their son is not picking up the book, but she really wants to break in and do it. And so we're actually writing a children's version, because it should be a family affair. You should have these conversations when you go to the store, or when Christmas time comes, and we're headed in towards a tough economic cycle. Have your children understand when you say we can't buy the PlayStation 4, and have those conversations. Don't be afraid of being real with your children, because when I go back to that statement of your money mindset is set at the age of 7, our job as parents is to be able to arm our children with a suit of armor and the confidence to be able to, manage their financial lives. Because, humans are hardwired to basic needs for survival and meaning, and we all need money to survive. So the book is not for our private clients, even though a lot of them, and my mother is a big fan, but it's really, I see this as there's 9 states that have financial literacy mandates. And when I was
Only
in high school,
9. Wow.
I grew up in a very small town in Pacific Northwest, and it's Othello. Matthew, do you know where that is?
I do know where Othello is. We used to spend summers in Moses Lake. So yeah, we'll tell stories about Eastern Washington on another day, but yep, very familiar with Othello.
Exactly. But so I lived in a very small farming community, and I ran a dance studio. So you could take this class called DO, Diversified Occupations. And that teacher taught us about how to create a budget and how to manage your personal finances. Nobody else got it, but that, still to this, I learned how to create a budget from him, how to be able to say no. So I see it as in education, right? In high school, as children are getting ready to adult, or young adults. My daughter just turned 30, and a lot of her friends really enjoy the book. So the younger generation, and the book is not only about budget, but it's about treating yourself like a business. One of my mentors, I was running the financials for a firm. And, I never balanced my own checking account yet. I was responsible for ensuring that 8,000 client portfolios were reconciled, that, 8,000 clients were billed, and managing the finances. But, he said, I sit down every year and I create personal financial statements and I project out my net worth, what it's going to be. And I set goals around my finances and goals around myself personally. That has stuck with me, and that's what I do, right? And so the book has cash flow statements. It has, we kind of wrote it in a fun, youthful term. So I call a balance sheet a financial selfie, and then funny. Projecting that out is called a future selfie. So it's, and it has fun, creative financial worksheets where you can create a budget if you want to, not in Excel, where it's pretty graphically, and and you can do it in crayons or you can do it in colored pencils.
I love that. I know that something that comes up as advisors is often we're referred to children of clients, right, or nieces or nephews of clients. And I talk often about, hey, if someone's not a good fit for your practice, they're just not a good fit. Like we can't make exceptions for those. But at the same point, we don't want to just turn them away into the wind. Mm-hmm. I'm going to order and have just a stack of these books so that when I used to give out Dave Ramsey books, and I like some of his stuff, and I don't like other of his stuff. We can talk about that in another episode. But to have these to be able to give to clients, to their adult children, when friends or family are getting married, any of these things, it's such a great way to say, like, hey, I want to help you. Like, I sincerely from my heart want you to be successful. I'm just not the person that can guide you day to day, but here's a great resource for you.
I love that. And we're receiving an award. And so we are giving out copies, to 150 of the attendees, and they're all very successful financial advisors. And, the cover page is exactly going to be that is, you can either give this to your young clients so you focus on their investments, right? But this is only going to help them with the basics of managing their financial life. So you don't have to have those tough conversations with them around, you got to live within this guardrail. I'm going to give you your income number. And you should embrace it instead of give pushback.
Yes. Would you mind telling us just a little bit about the process itself? So for any of our listeners that kind of feel like they have a book in their soul, or however we want to articulate that, what was sort of your experience? Of course, you had Kelli to also work with you along the way. And I've got Micah, right? My version of Kelli. A fun side note, Micah's wife's name is Kelli, though it's obviously not the same Kelli that you're working with. But just what are your thoughts? And of course, Josh Rabb was on the podcast some time ago. But tell us a little bit about the creative process and what it was like for you as an individual and so forth.
Well, I'll first say that, Josh was fantastic in having Kelli and I break up with our egos, right? Because we come to him with this book that we've worked really, really hard on, and he edited it to pieces and gives you this feedback. And at first, you're very defensive and no, and and the book wouldn't be what it is today without Josh. So we thank him for his beautiful gift of storytelling. But I think that really in our private practice, there's recurring themes, and a lot of the book starts with soft stuff. Family systems, knowing, talking about your money mindset, shame. I don't know if it's, this way with you, Matthew, but the first time I meet a prospect or even a client, they feel like they need to go into, why they're not where they want to be financially. So I always, say, so you need to remove your shame. There's no shame allowed in your finance game. You're here meeting with me to become better. And so a lot of it, it kind of starts with the emotional thing, but the book really wrote itself. And Kelli, I always say I'm loosey-goosey, right? Like I have all these ideas and strategic thinker, and Kelli is really good at, and she had just graduated from, got her master in science with innovation and design. Wow. She's amazing at telling stories visually, and she's an amazing writer. And so we data dumped about 100 different ideas, and it's really hard to kind of summarize it, but we narrowed it down to 18 lessons, but I couldn't have done it without Kelli. She probably edited me down 80%. But we're really happy and pleased, and we're getting a lot of feedback. You asked me earlier, who is this book for? We have a lot of private RIAs where financial advisors that we kind of gave them a copy of the book. And this is perfect for my young clients, right? And so this is what it is. I'm also on the board of a bank, and there's a big push with consumer education around managing your finances. And I think that this is, while it's not necessarily talking about investments, and we have big dreams, we want to do a lot of other books, but then compliance, right? The former CCO in me is always, no, we're not going to talk about investments here, but what were the recurring themes and the constant conversations that we were having with our clients on the private side of the wealth management business around, and it's the soft stuff, right? Which is knowing thyself, pulling the receipts, which is getting around the basics of creating financial statements for yourself, earning street cred, understanding the importance or paying attention to your interest rate and, your credit score, and protecting your identity, right, out there in the digital world, especially, young individuals and even older individuals. They always get, kind of sucked into, unfortunately, these cyber attacks. People will be calling them all the time and sending money. And then it ends with treating yourself like a business. Again, taking that balance sheet and leveling up to, project out your future selfie and breaking up with your ego, right? Because, we get distracted. Our friends and comparison is a thief of joy, or the thief of joy we have in the book of, the rabbit never wins the race. It's the tortoise. Create a plan. Kind of speaking to your meeting surges, right? You're very diligent in how you run your business, and it's very systematized. It's if you have a plan for your financial life, the fear and the anxiety will go away. You won't feel like you're being punished if you say no to going on that elaborate trip because your friends are going, because you've made a decision. And I'll also say, when we do budgeting, I pull taxes down. Like, I have learned to love taxes, and I don't know enough. If I had all the time in the world, I would maybe go get my CPA, but I just love it, right? And so pulling that down and having people put it in their budget, right? So I kind of break down a budget in 4 categories, because you can project out, generally speaking, what your taxes are on January 1st.
For sure. I love it. I've been taking notes here. Every time you see me look down, of course, for our listeners, you can't see me look down, but I love some of these terminologies that you've come up with for making this into plain English. I think one of the biggest mistakes we make as advisors is we talk to clients like we talk to each other, and it's all jargon. It's like if your doctor starts rattling off for you like the medical term of the medicine they're giving, like, no, I just need to know that that's Tylenol. So I love this selfie, this future selfie, no shame in the finance game. these might, I think to the amateur, these might seem like cute things to say, but to the professional, to someone like you and I have been doing this a long time, these can really make the difference between a client having an empowered financial future and them saying, I guess I'll pick the advisor with the nicest office or with the most pages or the cutest paper. This is really making, sorry, I'm like on a soapbox here. This makes such a difference in the client experience if you can talk in their language.
Exactly. And that probably speaks when I was CCO preparing our ADVs back in the day when the SEC pushed forth this initiative of writing everything in plain English. And when we first wrote the book, it was very technical and very boring. But if you get to know me, Matthew, I am a hip hop enthusiast, and I often speak in lyrics. It's just who I am. I'm a very young 53-year-old, and that's why we rewrote the book, and expenses I talk about, check yourself, right? Where there's good expenses and there's bad expenses, and I do simplify it in really simple terms because finance can be a little boring, right? I want to make better clients for other individuals, right? Where we can't be everything to everybody. And especially as advisors, we only have so much time. So if this is a way where I can empower the young generation to be embracing their finances and not relying on, a TikTok influencer, giving them the knowledge to understand the why they're doing these things.
Boy, I love it. Boy, we could, we'll have to have you back on the podcast because we could go for hours. I have so many questions to ask you, but want to make sure that we translate this into action items for the listeners, right? I mean, I literally wrote down several action items. Some of these phrases I'm going to start implementing in my practice, but what are some action items that come to mind for you, for our listeners, which now, to my astonishment, is some like 70,000 people a month, which is really exciting. But what action items would you give to our listeners?
Congratulations. Well, first I'm going to say fall is tax planning season, right? So everybody should be doing a little bit of their tax planning now. You can pick up the book and maybe it will inspire you. We've come up with a discount code. So for anybody listening, you can use Jarvis20 and go to colearningbooks.com. Co-learning is essentially, is a hybrid of coloring while you're learning. And so you can go to the website, and we're actually recording a podcast where we're going to, try to help give some education and leadership behind the book, because this is a self-paced book. This is something that you can do in your own time. It has a lot of self-care built in, because the young generation, they believe that the employer should help them improve their financial well-being. So a lot of big employers are bringing CFPs and offering that as a service, but this can be a perfect way where you can give a book to your team and have a conversation about it.
Boy, I love that. So we'll have the discount code, and we'll have the link, everything in the show notes. Excuse me. I'm going to go ahead and order a stack from my office. I would say for our advisors, order at least one copy, probably order a stack of them, find ways to give them out, help with financial literacy. It will help your practice. It will also just help the industry at large. It will make you a better person by contributing to this at large. I would also put as an action item, you mentioned, look for these common themes. You're going to have clients, whatever your niche is, clients are going to ask consistent questions. Sometimes that varies by period to period, but figure out how are you going to articulate an answer to that, right? Is it something like your current selfie and your future selfie? Is it buckets? Is it guardrails? How are you going to articulate those very common issues in a way that is in total plain English? So
I love that.
Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited for everything you're doing. We'll have to have you again on soon. And for all of our listeners, until next time, happy planning.
All right. Thank you very much, Matthew, for taking so much. You're giving so much of your time back to your peers. I really appreciate your leadership.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much. It's really been a lot of fun.
All right.